Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Pranaya Karuna Ghana Ghanatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Pranaya Karuna Ghana Ghanatam Praptasya Kalyana Gurunana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Praptasya Kalyana Gurunana Vasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nritya Gita Baditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nritya Gita Baditra Madhyam Manasura Sena Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Shringara Tanma Diramarjanado Shri Vigrahara Dhana Nityanana Shringara Tanma Juktasya Bhaktamsya Neyonjatapi Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Svatpanna Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Svatpanna Triptan Kritvaiva Tripte Bhajata Sadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shiradhikama Dhavayara Para Madhurya Leela Gunarupa Namna Shri Radhika Madhavara Madhura Leela Gunarupa Namna Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Pratikshana Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Ne kunjayono Rati Kelisidyai Jayali Bhir Jukti Apekshaniya Ne kunjayono Tatratitakya Atibalabhasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Sakshadharitena Shamasta Shastri Uktastatha Bhavyataiva Sadavi Sakshadharitena Shamasta Shastri Uktastatha Bhavyataiva Sadavi Kintu Prabhorja Priya eva tasya Vande Gurashi Charanarvindam Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutapi Dayam Stuvam Tasya Yashastrin Sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanarvindam Dhyayam Stuvam Tasya Yashastrin Sandhyam Vande Gurashi Dhyayam Stuvam Tasya Yashastrin Sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanarvindam Nama O Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitina Mine Nama Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatari Shatarine Namaste Shunyavadi Vachata Desata Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Gadadhara Shivasari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Namamishwaram Sachidanandarupam Lasatkundalam Gokule Brajamanam
Namamishwaram Sachidanandarupam Lasatkundalam Gokule Brajamanam
Yashodabhiyolukaladhavamanam Paramishram Atyantato Drutagopya Rudantamuhurnetra yugmam rujantam Karambojayugmena satankanetram Muhusvasakam patrirekhankakantha Stithagraham damodaram bhaktipadham Iti Drviksvalilabhiranandakunde Svaghosham nimajantam akhyapayantam Tadyeshu tatneshu bhaktirjitatvam Puna prematastam sathavriti vande Varam deva moksham na moksham vadim va Na chainam raneham vare sadapiha Idham teva purnatha gopala balam Sada me manasvaya virastam kimanne इदं ते मुखभोजं मध्यान्तनीले रथं कुण्ठेला स्निग्धा रक्तशगोप्या मुहुश्चुम्बितं बिम्बारक्ताधरं हि मनसविरास्तमलां लक्ष्यलभे नमो देवा दामोदरानन्त विष्णो प्रसिद्ध प्रभो दुःखजलब्धिमग्नम् मुहुशुम्बितं बिम्बारक्ताधरं हि मनसविरास्तमलां लक्ष्यलभे कृपादृष्टिवृषातिथीनं बतानु ग्रहनिशा मम जम्मि दीक्षिदृशा कुबेरात्मजां बद्धां मृत्यैव यद्वत् त्वया मोचितौ भक्तिभक्तकृतौ च त्वया मोचितौ भक्तिभक्तकृतौ च तथा प्रेम भक्तिं स्वकामि प्रयाश्च न मोक्षे ग्रहो मे स्थितामुदरेह नमस्ते तु धाम्ने स्फुरदीप्तिधाम्ने त्वदीयोद्धरायाता विश्वस्य धाम्ने नमो राधिकायै त्वदीया प्रियायै नमो नन्तालीलया देवया तुभ्यम् नमो राधिकायै त्वदीया प्रियायै नमो नन्तलीलया देवया तुभ्यम् Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Radha Damodar Radha Damodar Shri Radhe
Jaya Radha Damodara, Radha Damodara Shri Radhe.
Jaya Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Shri Radhe
Jaya Radha Nilamada, Radha Nilamada Shri Radhe.
Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra Jaya Sita Ram Jaya Sita Ram Jaya Sita Ram Jaya Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Jaya Lakshmi Narasimha Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Gurudev 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev Jaya Jaya Gurudev
Jai Vishnupada Paramita Prabhajakachadyas Tuttara Sarasishimariskon Pratishta Vibhiti Samstapakachar Vaishnava Siramani Gaura Priyajana Krishna Prema Bhakti Datta Patita Pavana His Divine Grace Abhacharavinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patitu Dhari Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sadguru Swami Prabhu's Ki Jai Namacharya Shila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai Jayananta Kuti Vaishnavindi Ki Jai Prem Sikoho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Gaura Bhakta Vindi Ki Jai Param Dayal Shri Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai Jai Pramanama Sankirtane Ka Janaka Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinandana Shriman Gauranga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mahavanaya Avatar Ki Jai Golokera Pramadhan Rinam Sankirtan Jaya Ki Jai Jugo Dharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai Brihat Midanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopina Radha Kunsama Kungiraj Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Brajabhim Vrindavan Mathurdam Ki Jai The Lordship Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai Shri Mayapurna Madhuvika Chakradam Ki Jai Paramakarun Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Shri Purushottam Kitra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Smaspadradev Surashan Chakra Bhavan Ki Jai Bhakti Sarva Vikna Vinashana Karushingare Bhagavan Ki Jai Shri Ganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shri Mathuradharani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vinda Ki Jai Shri Yasoda Muda Kartik Masa Ki Jai Gaura Pramanande All glory to Assembly bodies, all glory to Assembly bodies, all glory to Assembly bodies, all glory to Shri Guru Shri Gurang. Nishingapuri, Nishingare.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Praladadayine. Yanyakashipurvachaha. Shilantan kanakalaye.
Jaya Silatankanakalaye.
To Narsimho Parato Narsimho.
Ito Nisinga Parato Nisinga.
Yato Yato Yamitato Narsimho.
Jaya Jato Jato Jamitato Nisinga.
Pahe Narsimha Hridaye Narsimha.
Bhai Nisinga Rudaye Nisinga.
Narasimha Madhim Saranam Prapate.
Narasimha Madhim Sharanam Prapate.
Savakara Kamala Varenakam Abhuta Simha Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanupinga Keshavatirtha Narahari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare Jai Jagadisha Hare.
Baba Kara Kamala Bade Nakam Adabhuta Sena Lalita Iranakasipo Kanavena Ekavadita Naradirupa Jagadisha Re Jai Jagadisha Re
Jayo Narsimhadev, Jayo Narsimhadev, Jayo Narsimhadev, Jayo Narsimhadev.
Jaya Nisingare, Jaya Nisingare, Jaya Nisingare, Jaya Nisingare.
Jayo Palad Maharaj, Jayo Palad Maharaj, Jayo Palad Maharaj, Jayo Palad Maharaj.
Jaya Pramara, Jaya Bhakta Prana, Prana, Jaya Prana.
Nitai Gora Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gora Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. जय श्री श्री भक्ति पद सर्व विघ्न विनाशना करने सिंहरे भगवान की जय। जय भक्त श्रेष्ठ प्रहलाद महाराज की गौर प्रेमानंदे। श्री वृंदाई तुलसी देवाई प्रिय के सब सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादे देवी शतभक्ताय नमो नमः। वृंदाई तुलसी देवाई प्रिय के सब सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादे देवी शतभक्ताय नमो नमः। वृंदायै तुलसी देवाय प्रियै केशव सत्या कृष्ण भक्ति प्रदे देवे शतवताय नमो नमः। जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंदा देवी की जय।
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः। राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो हे अभिलाषी
राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो हे अभिलाषी
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो
जे तोमार चरणालो तारा वांच पूर्णा होय।
जय तुम्हार चरणालो
तारा वांच पूर्णा होय। कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावनवासी कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावनवासी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः।
मोराए बिलास बिलास कुंज दियो वास
मोराया बिलास
बिलास कुंज दियो वास नायाने घेरी बो सदा युगल रूप राशि नयने घेरी बो सदा युगल रूप राशि नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः। यही निवेदना तारो साकीरानुगाता करो सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी
सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः।
दीना कृष्ण दासे को के जन मोरा हो प्रेमे सदा येन भासि
Sri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Hinamasi
Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sada येन भासि
Sri Radha Govinda Preme Sada Hinamasi
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Priyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi Krishna Priyasi Namo Namaha
Yani Kani Japapani Brahma Hatyadikani Cha Tani Tani Pranakshanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Tani Kani
Japapani Brahma Hatyadikani Cha Tani Tani Pranakshanti Pradakshina Pade Pade Yani Kani Japapani Brahma Hatyadikani Cha Tani Tani Pranakshanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Tani Kani Japapani
Brahma Hatyadikani Cha Tani Tani Pranakshanti Pradakshina Pade Pade Yani Kani Japapani Brahma Hatyadikani Cha Tani Tani Pranakshanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Tani Japapani Brahma Hatyadikani Cha Tani Tani Pranakshanti Pradakshina Pade Pade
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Vrinde Devi Jaya Vrinde Devi Jaya Vrinde Devi Jaya Vrinde Devi Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Jaya Tulsi Maharani Nittai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nittai Gaura Hari Bol Nittai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol
Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devai Priyaye Ke Savasatya Vishnu Bhakti Prade Devi Satavata Namo Vrindai tulasi debai piyai ke savasatya Vishnu bhakti prade devi sattvatai namanama Vrindai tulasi debai priyai ke savasatya Krishna bhakti prade devi sattvatai namanama Jai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has wishes fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of Kavadams of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen and lowly servant Krishna prays. May I always swim in love with Shri Radha and Govinda. Shri Mati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi Ki. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikhastakam Ki Jai. Chaito Darpanam Arjanam Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam Shreyakari Vachandrika Vitaranam Vidya Vadhu Jivanam Anandam Buddhivardhanam Pratipadam Purnamrita Swadanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Baudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrapita Niyamita Shmarane Nakala Etadrishi Tava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdaivam Idishamya Janina Nuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari Na Dhanam Na Janam Na Sundarim Kovitam Jagarishaka Maye Mama Janmani Janmanishwari Bhavata Bhakti Raituki Tvai Ainanda Tanuja Kinkaram Paritama Bisame Baba Buddho Kripaya Tava Pankaja Stithatule Sadrisham Vichintaya Nayanam Galarashtrudharya Vadanam Gadigadarudhaya Gira Pulakarichitam Vapukada Tava Nama Grahane Bhavisyati Juga Itam Nimishena Chakshusha Pravusha Itam Shunya Itam Jagata Sarvam Govinda Birainame Asli Shava Bhadaratam Pinastumam Adarshanar Marmahatam Karotuva Jata Tathava Vidadhatulam Pata Mat Pranatastu Saivana Para Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shikhastakam Ki Jai Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauratveshe Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Saminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devem Gauravane Pracharine Nivishesha Strunavadi Vatsattari Satarine. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years, and extinguish the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself a lord and stroll in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharajnanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, somehow or other I'm falling in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? And will the hairs of my body stand on end the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I'm considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna as my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything. For he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Siksastikam Ki Jai. Namaste, Saraswati Devi, Guru There are 10 offenses in matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. Blasphemy devotees who dedicate their life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider names of demigods, and Lord Shiva and Lord Brahman to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures and pursuance of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna as imagination. 6. To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as fruitive activities of karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. And 10. Do not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpa Tarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevicha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vaishnava Thakur Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tanami. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Vanagacharani Visesu Nyor Paskati Sutana. Shri Guru Pranama Ki Jai. Om Aganyati Mirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manodistam Sapitam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Pandeham Shri Guru Shri Jatahapajikamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Sa Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Saganasvatam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savatam Jana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Divitam Sha Manda Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namini
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Tinamine Shri Varsavanavi Devi Daitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhuve Namaha Madhur Ujjvala Premadya Shri Rupanuga Bhakti Da Shri Gora Karuna Sakti Vigrahaya Namastute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasiddhanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishoraya Sakshat Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambodhe Padambudaya Te Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitanandanamine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gauravir Bhava Bhumestvam Nirdesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhoma Sri Jagannataya Te Namaha Namo Vanchakalpa Tarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhye Cha Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Guru Chuse Namaha Panchatattvatpakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhakta Akram Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastate Jayatam Suratur Pangor Mama Mandamatir Gati Matsarva Swapadambojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vindaranya Kalpadumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prestali Bihi Sevyamana Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsivata Tatastita Karsan Venuswanir Gopir Gopinatak Striyeshtuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahmasamhita ki jai Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chentamani Prakarasatma Sukalpa Vriksha Laksha Vrite Susurabir Abhipalyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrahma Sevyamanam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Granandam Aravinda Dalayataksham Barhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandarpa Kotikamaniya Visesa Sobham Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadmanamasya Bamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranayakili Kalavilasam Shamam Tribanga Lalita Nita Prakasam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Pantika Yanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sadurlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragam Yovayo Ratapi Manaso Manipwangamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sola Chaitam Jagaranda Kotim Yaschakti Rasta Jagananda Jaya Yadanta Danta Rasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Deo Manujasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusa Suktarya Meva Nigama Pratitastavanti Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavita Vistabirya Evani Jarupa Tayakalabi Goloka Evani Visata Kilatma Bhutto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santaksa Devi Desu Vilokanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achinta Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalani Menitistan Anavataram Akarod Bhuvanesu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramampamam Yo Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabhapa Vato Jagananda Kotim Kotis Vasesha Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahman Iskalamanantam Shesha Bhutam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Yasya Jagananda Satani Srute Trigunya Tad Visaya Veda Vitaya Manam Sattva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham bhajami ananda chinmaya rasat matayamana suya prani nam patifulam smaratam upetya lilaya tena bhuvanani jayaya jastram govinda mahati purisham tamaham bhajami koloka namni nijadamni tare chitasya devi maheswari dama sate satesu te te prabhavani jaya vitasya yena govinda mahati purisham tamaham bhajami shishtista te pralaya sadhava sakti reka jaye vyasya bhuvanani vibharti durga ichana rupam apyasya chitesta tesa govinda mahati purisham tamaham bhajami shiram yata dadi vikara visesha yoga sanjaya tena itata pritakaste hetu yasambutam apitata samapaitika yat govinda mahati purisham tamaham bhajami diparchadeva dasantanam abhyapetya dipayate vivita hetu samanutarnam stadad vigeva hicha vishnutaya vibhati govinda mahati purisham tamaham bhajami yam krodakam Ramananta Jagananta Avalambya Murtin Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Asyaika Nisvasita Kalamata Avalambya Vante Lo Jagananda Kalabhisesu Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Basmanya Tasma Sakalation Jesu Tejas Sriyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitat Patatra Brahmaya Esa Jagadanda Vidana Karta Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami At Pada Palava Yugam Vinidai Kumbha Dvande Pranama Samayesa Ganadi Raja Vignam Nihanta Malamasya Jagatriyasya Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahika Ganamambu Maruti Sasya Kalasta Tatma Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Yamcha Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschaksuresa Savita Sagalagrana Raja Samasta Suramurti Sesa Teja Yasyagaya Brahmati Sambrita Kalachakro Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmo Tapapa Nichaya Sutayasta Pamsi Brahmadi Kita Patakaba Testa Jiva Yadata Matra Vibhava Prakata Prabhava Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yastendra Gopamata Vendra Mahosva Karma Pandanu Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nidhati Kinchija Bhakti Bhajam Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Kroda Kama Saja Pranadi Biti Vatsaya Moha Guru Guru Vasavya Bhava Sanchintya Tasha Sadvisantanam Apurete Govinda Mahadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpatara Vajumabu Mishchintamani Ganama Itram Bhakta Kata Ganam Natyam Gamanam Apibam Sipriya Saki Chirandam Juti Param Apitata Swadyam Apicha Sayatra Shiradi Bisha Vidisarabi Vyasta Sumahan Nimesar Dakyuva Rajiti Nahia Tripisamaya Bhajay Sritadipam Tamaham Ihu Golakamiti Vedanta Ste Santak Shiti Virachara Katipaya Shri Guru Vastika Prayaski Jet. The spiritual masters receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire materially exists. Or for my respectful base unto Lotus Street, such spiritual master who's a notion of auspicious qualities, chanting the holy name, dancing next, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end, he feels quivering in his body and tears fall from his eyes like waves. Or for my respectful base unto Lotus Street is such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship. But the Lord, are for my respectful base unto Lotus Street is such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always offering Krishna four kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavat Prasada, he is satisfied. Or for my respectful base unto Lotus Street of such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited consequences of Radhika and Madhava and the qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. Are for my respectful base unto Lotus Street is such spiritual master. Spiritual master is very dear because he's expert in assisting gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's consequent loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana. Are for my most humble obeisance unto Lotus Feet is such spiritual master. Spiritual master to be honored as much as Supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Feet such spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisance unto Lotus Feet of my spiritual master, his divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 6, verse number 3. Sonu pravisto bhagavams chesta rupena tam ganam Binam samyojayam asa suptam karma pabodayan sa. That Anupavista, thus entering later on, Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, Chesta Rupena, by his representation of attempt, Kali, Tam, them, Ganam, all the living entities, including the demigods, Binam, separately, Sam Yojayam, Sam Yojanam Asa, engaged to work, Suptam, sleeping, Karma, work, Prabodhayan, enlightening. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Thus, when the personality of Godhead entered into the elements by his energy, all the living entities were enlivened into different activities, just as one is engaged in his work after awakening from sleep. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Every individual soul remains unconscious after the dissolution of the creation, and thus enters into the Lord with his material energy. These individual living entities are conditioned souls everlastingly, but in each and every material creation they are given a chance to liberate themselves and become free souls. They are all given a chance to take advantage of the Vedic wisdom and find out what is their relationship with the Supreme Lord, how they can be liberated, and what the ultimate profit is in such liberation. By properly studying the Vedas, one becomes conscious of his position and thus takes to the transcendental devotional service of the Lord and is gradually promoted to the spiritual sky. The individual souls in the material world engage in different activities according to their past unfinished desires. After the dissolution of a particular body, the individual soul forgets everything, but the all-merciful Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart as the witness, the supersoul, awakens him and reminds him of his past desires, and thus he begins to act accordingly in his next life. This unseen guidance is described as fate, and a sensible man can understand that this continues his material bondage in the three modes of nature. The unconscious sleeping stage of the living entity just after the partial or total dissolution of the creation is wrongly accepted as the final stage of life by some less intelligent philosophers. After the dissolution of the partial material body, a living entity remains unconscious for only a few months, and after the total dissolution of the material creation, he remains unconscious for many millions of years. But when the creation is again revived, he is awakened to his work by the Lord. The living entity is eternal, and the wakeful state of his consciousness, manifested by activities, is his natural condition of life. He cannot stop acting while awake, and thus he acts according to his diverse desires. When his desires are trained in the transcendental service of the Lord, his life becomes perfect, and he is promoted to the spiritual sky to enjoy eternal awakened life. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thus, when the personality of Godhead entered into the elements by his energy, all the living entities were enlivened into different activities, just as one is engaged in his work after awakening from sleep. Gaur Premanandi, Haribol, Haribol, Haribol. So there's a very nice lecture given by Srila Prabhupada in Melbourne on the Srimad Bhagavatam 6th canto, 1st chapter, verses 1 and 2. And he explains what is nature's law. Basically, he's explaining the same thing in this verse today, 3:6:3. But he gives a lot more information and elaboration in this lecture in 6:1, 1 and 2. So, he starts off by talking about Nivriti Marg and Pavriti Marg. So, Nivriti Marg is going in the opposite direction of progressing towards, or progressing towards the hellish condition of life. So it's basically engaging in sense gratification. And Prabhupada says, by nature's own way, the living entity comes to the human form of body by the evolutionary process. Now this, you have to be very careful here to understand what he means by evolutionary process. He's not talking about Darwin's concept of evolution. According to the Bhagavad Gita, all the living entities are produced right in the beginning of creation. And this is explained in Bhagavad Gita, verse number... okay, I'll come back to that. Okay, so then when he's talking about the evolutionary process, it's an evolution of consciousness, not of bodies. The bodies have already been made right in the beginning of creation. So the evolution of consciousness means that according to our previous karma, we have unfinished desires and we perform activities, some of them good and some of them bad. And therefore, we're put in a suitable body to correspond to those unfinished desires and our previous karma. Now, there are 8,400,000 different species in the material universe, and one can be put in any one of them. And then one begins the slow, very, very slow process of advancing from one species to another until one comes to the human body. And even the human body, most of the human bodies are uncivilized. There are only a few that are civilized. But all the human bodies have a chance to make spiritual advancement and go back to Godhead. However, what is the difference between civilized and uncivilized? The uncivilized are not regulated in their habits of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. The civilized human beings are regulated. Therefore, they go to sleep early, they wake up early in the Brahma Muhurta period, and if they're trained properly, they chant their rounds very early in the morning, and then they come to Mangala Aarti, etc. So we see there's regulated and unregulated. The unregulated people that go to bed late, wake up late, and don't really chant rounds, and just engage in material activities, are on the level of animals. They're not actually human beings, although they have the human body and the human potential. However, they don't use that potential. It's just like a man, I know one devotee, he got a PhD in volcanoes from the college in Pennsylvania. And he ended up driving a taxi because he never really used his education. So if you get the human body, but you use it only for sense gratification, that's like the person who gets a PhD and just ends up driving a taxi. So we have to understand what is the, not the fate, but the destiny of the human body. So there's a difference between fate and destiny. Fate is what is determined by a previous karma and desires. And destiny is what we're doing now that will determine in the future our fate. So, usually for more ordinary human beings, they have a mixed bag of pious and impious activities, and at the moment of death, they still have many unfinished desires. So they have to take birth again. But for the devotee, it's a different thing. And now Prabhupada's going to explain this in detail. He says, we have, as he says, as we've already discussed, there are 900,000 forms in the water. I mean, there's 900,000 types of aquatics. And there are 2 million forms of plants. And there are also different types of bugs and reptiles and birds and also mammals, and then human beings. So altogether, there's 8,400,000 species. Okay, so we can take birth in any one of those. And therefore, and also, every one of those species, they go through different stages. They're born, they grow, they maintain, they give off byproducts, meaning children or offspring, they dwindle and they die. This is the law of material nature. You cannot change it. So therefore, as we explained yesterday, people are trying to do things that are impossible to attain, like go to Mars or the moon, like control material nature through science, and like stop the process of birth, death, old age, and disease. See, all these things, all these so-called goals that they're working for are impossible. Or to create fusion energy, they claim that the sun's light is performed or is created by fusion energy. That's not actually true. The sun's energy is coming from the Brahma Jyoti, which is reflected off the sun. So you see, not only do they have a wrong concept, they will never be able to attain what they want, which is creating sunlight and energy, say. And they're also trying to develop what's called the God particle by building these gigantic cyclotrons that accelerate the speed of atoms, and then they explode the atoms, and they think at one point it'll turn into energy, will turn into matter. But they've never been able to do it. They've claimed they did it in 2012. But if they did, why can't they produce something then? All they're doing is just accelerating atoms and then blowing them up and seeing what's happening. So it's a waste of money and time. But they convince other people, especially governments, that this is necessary. Okay, so many things they're trying to do that are impossible to achieve, and it just wastes money and time because they don't know what is the goal of life. So therefore, Prabhupada says, by nature's law, the evolution brings you to a nice body, a civilized human being with higher consciousness. But if we utilize this higher consciousness simply for constructing very high skyscraper buildings and do not know what form of body I am going to accept next, that is not very good. So, people are more interested today in having a career in science or technology or architecture or earth sciences or this science or that science, right? They're not interested to find out what kind of body I'm going to have next, what's going to happen to me after death. They're not interested at all. They don't ask any questions about these things. They just follow like sheeples. You know what a sheeple is? A sheeple is a person who acts like a sheep and follows the herd without asking where they're going. So all the sheeples are engaged in academic studies in order to attain a lot of money and buy a lot of things and waste their time eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and never ask the question, what's going to happen to me after death? And that's a very serious, let's say, abuse of the human form of life. And because of that, people suffer unnecessarily. So this is explained. Prabhupada says, but if we utilize this higher consciousness simply for constructing very high skyscraper buildings and do not know what form of body I'm going to accept next, that is not very good intelligence. My business is that by nature's evolutionary process, I have come to this human form of life. Now I have got good intelligence, better than the animals. But if I utilize that intelligence for simply having nice motor car and skyscraper building, but I do not know what is my future, then it is not very good. It is not very good intelligence. You can construct a very nice skyscraper building, and you can have a nice car, but you will not be allowed to stay here. What you have done for that, you will be kicked out at any moment. Then all your labor is simply a waste of time. You can solace yourself that my children will enjoy my legacy, or my grandsons will enjoy. But why not enjoy yourself? That is very uncertain. Any moment I shall be kicked out, and then, if it is a fact that I am going to accept another body, there's no guarantee what kind of body. I am going to accept, I have constructed a skyscraper building on account of my attachment. I may be allowed by the nature's law to stay in that building, but if by my activities I become a rat or cat in that building, then what is the profit? Whoa, Prabhupada is really throwing it big time. So one time we were on a morning walk with Prabhupada in Paris, and we went to, first of all, the Tuileries. The Tuileries is a garden of the gigantic museum in Paris. It's a very famous museum of ancient history, where they exhibit all the things they stole from Egypt and other countries and brought them to Paris. And then, so when we walked into that garden, by one of the entrances, Prabhupada stopped and he was looking at a statue of a Greek statue, of a man. And he smiled and he said, "This is illicit art." And we were looking to see why he said it's illicit, right? Well, it was a statue of a Greek that was naked, and it was showing his genitals. And Prabhupada said, yes, if there was a real man standing here, showing his genitals like this, the police would come and arrest him. So therefore, this is illicit art. So you see, Prabhupada's vision of things is different than ours. We might think, oh, look how great this ancient Greek statue is, and they've made the body just exactly like a human being. It looks like almost real, blah, blah, blah. Actually, it's illicit art. See? So his vision is different than ours. Anyway, after that, we went back to... he didn't go into the museum. It was closed at that time anyway. It was very early in the morning. And so we went to the Concorde. The Concorde is a gigantic, huge area right at the end of the Champs-Élysées, which is the most famous street in France and probably the world. And it's got a big monument that they stole from Egypt called the Obelisk. And it's very impressive, and many cars are there, and they go around this obelisk, and then you can go up to the Champs-Élysées, or you can go other ways. Anyway, on the other side of the Concorde is a hospital that Napoleon built in the 19th century, probably around 1820. And he built this hospital specifically for his troops that were invading Europe, and they went all the way to Russia, right, invading Russia, and of course they had casualties. All the casualties would be brought back to this very large, sprawling hospital. It's a very big place. It takes up a lot of land. And Prabhupada says, "What is that building?" And the devotee said, "Oh, Prabhupada, that's the hospital that Napoleon built." He said, "Oh, the hospital is still there, but Napoleon isn't." So right away he was explaining something spiritual. He said, he built this hospital. It's still there. The building is a fantastic building, and it was built, 200 some years ago, right? It's still standing and it's still in good shape, right? But Napoleon is not there. How long did he enjoy that hospital? And that's the point he's making here. You can build a big skyscraper, you might be some great architect or something, and build a skyscraper. You might be able to live in it a little bit, but you're going to be kicked out. And you don't know what's going to happen to you next, if that's all you've ever done in your life, see? So therefore, we are under nature's law, Prabhupada says. You cannot say that you are independent. But yet, we studied Jean-Paul Sartre, right? What did he say? We said, oh, we're condemned to be independent, right? So here we have so many false ideas flying around, by so-called philosophers, but actually they're foolosophers, and young kids have to study these books that written by these philosophers. Like I had to read a book by Albert Camus, who's just as dumb as Sartre. In fact, he was even dumber than Sartre. And he writes this crazy book. It's obligatory reading in college, in English courses, right? And he says that there's no meaning to life. It's absurd. That's his philosophy. And he said, no matter what you do, you will always be in an absurd condition because the whole nature is absurd. The whole life is absurd. Absurd means it has no meaning at all. It's crazy. It's not in any way predictable, right? So this is what he's teaching. Like whole generations of French have been brought up reading this book, and Americans also, and they end up believing this nonsense because it's supposed to be philosophy, right? Philosophy in English means love of the truth, right? And anyway, it's a complete falsity. So Prabhupada says, nature's law is very strict. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarva sahankara vimudatma kartaham iti manyate. Just like fire, he says. If you touch fire, it will burn. And even a child who is innocent, if the child touches fire, it will burn. There is no excuse. You cannot say, oh, the child is innocent. It does not know the effect of touching fire, so he should be excused. No, ignorance is no excuse. That is, even the state laws say that. You cannot say, suppose you have committed some criminal act. If you plead, oh, my Lord, Judge, I did not know that I should do like this or that. I had to suffer imprisonment, so you please excuse me now. No, that will not be excused. You know or you do not know the law. If you acted like that, you must suffer. This is what is going on. So there was one man, he was in prison, and he got in a fight with another prisoner, and the prisoner hit him over the head with a chair and knocked him out. And when he woke up, he had amnesia. And he said, what's going on here? Where am I? And the nurse said, you're in prison. Prison? I don't remember doing anything wrong. I'm going to write a letter to the warden. I should be let out right away. So he wrote a letter to the warden. I said, I don't remember doing anything wrong. I'm in here. This is unjust. You're putting an innocent person in this prison. I want to get out immediately. So the warden laughed when he saw the letter from the prisoner. And so his answer was, you don't remember anything, but we got a file on you that's this high of things that you did wrong. Therefore, you're staying in prison for the rest of your life. So it doesn't matter that you forgot. Krishna doesn't forget, and Yamaraj doesn't forget. And you're going to get what you deserve based on your karma. That's all. The laws are strict. So ignorance is not an excuse. So therefore, Prabhupada says, so we don't believe in the next life just to avoid this consequence. What is the consequence? Consequence is you have to either enjoy or suffer based on your karma, right? But that will not excuse us. We have to accept a type of body. Otherwise, how there are so many different types of bodies? What is the explanation? Why different forms of body? Different stages of body, different standard of body. That is nature's law. Therefore, this human form of life should be properly utilized, not simply engaged in sense gratification like cats and dogs. That is not very responsible life. Responsible life is that I have got this improved form of life than the cats and dogs, and I have got more intelligence than the cats and dogs. If I simply utilize all these assets for 4 bodily necessities of life, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, 4 bodily necessities of life means we require some eating, etc. The cats and dogs, human being or high court judge or anyone, they require some eating. They require sleeping, apartment. The cats and dogs can sleep without apartment, but the sleeping is required. That is a fact. Eating is required. That is a fact. And sex life, that is also a fact. And defense, that is also a fact. But these things are common to the cats and dogs and man, human being. So what is the special feature of the human being? The special feature of the human being is that a human being can consider that I have got this nice American or Australian or Indian body. Then what am I going to get next? What kind of body? That is utilized, that is human intelligence. A cat and dog cannot think like that. Therefore, our business should be, now by nature's way, I have come to this form of life by evolutionary process. Now I have got good intelligence. How should I utilize this intelligence? That proper utilization is indicated in the Vedanta philosophy. Vedanta philosophy, perhaps you have heard the name. Veda means knowledge, and Anta means last stage or end. Everything has some end. So you are being educated. You are taking education. Where it shall end, that is called Vedanta, where the ultimate point is. So Prabhupada is saying, you, meaning his disciples, you have come to me, and I have explained this to you, and now you've taken it up. You want to know what's going to be your next body, right? This is a fundamental question of life. So just like someone goes to school to get trained for a career, but that career is going to end, and that body is going to end. So that's not the real knowledge that we need. We may need it just to make a living, but that's all. It's only for a living for a short period of time, and we don't know how much time we have. A person who's 80 years old and is going to live another 20 years is a young man. And a person who's 20 years old but is only going to live 2 years is an old man. So we don't know how long we're going to live. Therefore, the materialists, they live as if they're going to be eternal. And a devotee, he lives as if he's going to die in the next minute or the next second. Therefore, he is not concerned about simply eating, sleeping, and mating, defending. He wants to know what's going to happen to me and how can I prepare myself for the best possible outcome in this life. The best possible outcome is going back to Godhead, becoming Krishna conscious in this life, and at the moment of death, remembering Krishna and going back to Godhead. That's the best possible outcome. It's not, oh, when I die, I'll have $4 billion in the bank. That's an abomination. That's embarrassing. That's the nonsense. You know, you could have done so much good with that money. What good is it just sitting in the bank? Oh, my kids will have it. Well, I had an uncle, and he was a very stingy guy. He never went to a barber. He would cut his own hair. He never bought furniture. He would get orange crates and put a little cloth on top of it. I remember going to his house once, and I was sitting on this orange crate that was, going like this, So when we left, I said to my mom, I said, Mom, what is this? He doesn't have any furniture. He just has crates. She said, don't talk about it. He's your uncle. Don't say anything. So he was a very stingy guy, and he collected money, and he hardly ever spent it for himself or for his family. And then when he died, and all the money went to his wife, and his wife, and he adopted a son. Now this kid was a nonsense. He must have been born, from a drug addict or something, And, he never did well in school. He flunked out of school, and he never learned how to do anything. He was always doing nonsense things. So, but he was smart enough to know that he was the next in line after the mother for his father's money. So what did he do? He pestered the mother. He made her suffer like anything, and she died quickly, right? He got all the money, and in 3 months, he spent the whole thing. And the last thing he bought with the money was a racehorse that he named after his father. And that racehorse broke its leg and died very soon. So then he ended up homeless, right? The man collected that money over a whole lifetime, right? And the kid spent it in 3 months. So this is like horrible, right? But that's what happens when people are not concerned about what's going to happen to me next. What's my next body going to be? What's my fate? And I'm building my fate right now by what's called destiny. By the activities I'm performing now, it's going to determine what's going to happen after death. People don't think about this. So, the proper utilization of intelligence is indicated in the Vedanta philosophy. Vedanta philosophy, perhaps you have heard the name. Veda means knowledge, and Anta means the last stage, or the goal of that knowledge, or the end. Everything has got some end, so you are being educated. You are taking education. Where it shall end, that is called Vedanta, where the ultimate point is. So Vedanta philosophy says, that is Vedanta philosophy. Ultimate knowledge. The ultimate knowledge that is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. What is that ultimate knowledge? Vedaisha sarvir aham eva vedya. And through all the Vedas, Krishna says, I am to be known. You are cultivating knowledge. The ultimate goal of knowledge, Krishna says, is to know me, is to know Krishna. Vedaisha sarvir aham eva vidyam. The whole knowledge is meant for understanding Krishna, or God. That is the end of knowledge. By progressive knowledge, you can make progress. But unless you do not come to the point to understand what is God, then your knowledge is imperfect. That is called Vedanta, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. This human form of life gives nice facility and intelligence, just like Australia was undeveloped. Since the Europeans came here, it is now very developed, resourceful, because the intelligence has been utilized. Similarly, America and many other places. So this intelligence should be utilized, but if we simply utilize this intelligence for the same purpose as the cats and dogs are engaged in, then it is not proper utilization. The proper utilization is Vedanta. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now you should inquire about Brahman, the Absolute. That is intelligence. Wow, you see what Prabhupada did. He came and he spoke to so many young people and all people. He's trying to convince them, look, don't waste your time like an animal, just eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. You got a you have the equipment to understand your relationship with God. The animals don't have that equipment. They don't have advanced intelligence. They don't have a mind that can figure things out. They don't have such highly evolved senses as you do. Use these senses for acquiring real knowledge of Vedanta, the end of all knowledge, and use your mind and intelligence and fill it up with Krishna consciousness, knowing all about God and your relationship with God, and then act in that relationship. So that's what Prabhupada did, and look at what he achieved, right? And he started with nothing. He comes to America with nothing. In 11 years, he builds this gigantic movement that has hundreds of millions of assets out of nothing. No, but it wasn't nothing. He had Krishna consciousness. That was the source of his success. He had absolute faith in Krishna. He was not afraid to take a risk at 70 years old, come to a foreign country and begin to preach without any money and without any disciples. And look what he did, right, in a short period of time. Okay, so Prabhupada continues. So the Krishna consciousness movement, as I have repeatedly said, is that culture. Atato Brahma Jigyasa. What is the ultimate aim of life? Because I am eternal, I am simply changing body. Najayate mriyate va katachin. Katachit means at any time the Atma, the soul, is never born. Najayate, the living soul. Najayate. Najayate means never born. But I see my child is born. No, that you see the body of the child, not the child as soul. You see. That is knowledge. So that's why we talk about soul-to-soul relationships in Krishna consciousness. And the Maya and the materialists, they have body-to-body relationships. Therefore, they always remain in the body. But if you have soul-to-soul relationships with, let's say, with your God brothers and God sisters and with Krishna, then you go back to Godhead. So our interest is soul-to-soul. Their interest is body-to-body. Just like, somebody's, let's say some attractive man or attractive woman is walking down the street and people look at it and say, wow, look at that body, it's really nice. They're not seeing the soul of the person, they're just looking at the body. Or they look at someone and go, look at how ugly that person is. That's really disgusting. But wait a minute, that person has an eternal soul. And wait a minute, Krishna is in the body of that person that looks ugly, see? So by the way, if the guru is ugly, you should not consider that. See? You should give the guru the same respect as a guru who might be very handsome or very beautiful or whatever. Because then you would be in a body-to-body relationship, not a soul-to-soul relationship. See? Like there's this one guru in India, he's like, he died, but he was crippled, right? I forget his name right now. I'll think about it in a minute. And he was always like crooked, and but people loved him because they didn't see his body; they saw what he was expressing to them. He was a Mayavadi, but yet people loved him not because of his body, but because of his speaking and the philosophy that he was giving them. Okay, so therefore. He says, they are also, so then what is the difference between dogs, hogs, and myself? Therefore, Shastra says, Nayam deho bhajam nirloke kastam kamam arhate vidbujamte. Srimad Bhagavatam 5.5.1. This is the warning given by Maharaj Rishabhadev to his sons. My dear sons, don't spoil your life working very hard like the dogs and hogs, just to satisfy your senses. This is the instruction. We are being taught at the modern age that work very hard and enjoy your senses. This is modern civilization. Get money some way or other and spend it for sense gratification. That is the goal. Nate vidu swarta katim hi Vishnum. Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.31. They are not taught. They are not educated that what is the end of life, goal of life, that is God realization. They do not know it. Nate vidu. They do not know it. So the other day I get a email from a kid in high school here, and he says, my name is so-and-so, and I would like to talk to you because I have this project to make the city council of Sammamish conscious of the need for climate action. Now, what does that mean, climate action? Everybody's convinced now because they teach it in school. Not that they studied it on the internet. They teach it in school that there's a big, let's say, thing wrong with our society. It's cows. They are creating methane gas, and that's going up into the atmosphere, and that is blocking, that is creating this heat wave and global and climate change. And it's all because of the cows. You know what they do now in London, in England? Kids who've been indoctrinated like this, go into supermarkets and they purposely open up gallons of milk and pour it on the ground in the supermarket. Did you know that? It's a movement now in England. They want all cows eliminated, right? Because they say it's ruining the climate. So this kid has not got to that level of fanaticism yet, because he hasn't read about what his cohorts are doing in England, but they're going to do it here too, guaranteed, right? So the kid's telling me, I'm going door to door in my neighborhood and making people aware of climate action. Climate action means you become a soldier to stop the carbon emissions that are causing the climate change. You know. So then I didn't answer the kid. So then his father called me, and his father knows me. He comes to the temple every once in a while. And he says, and he also told me, I listen to some of your lectures. You know. So he said, I want to talk to you about this climate action. So I met him yesterday at the farm. So he comes to the farm. He's a nice man, and I helped him a lot at one point in his life, many years ago. The doctors were trying to convince his wife to have an abortion, and they said that the child might be not well formed or something like that. So he had talked to me about that, and I told him, look, just ignore that nonsense. I said, you're not going to kill your own child, are you? So they had a child, and the child was just okay, right? So he remembered that, so he told me about that. I forgot about it. Anyway, he started talking to me about getting involved in the climate action and going to the city council and explain to them that this city council hasn't done anything yet about climate action. But if you go to, I was at the Seattle Center Saturday. They built this new big building. It's called Climate Action. It's a big sign, right? This is a big movement now, climate action. We got to do something to change this climate disaster. Anyway, he said, what do you think about this? After he gave his speech. I said, I'm not very impressed. He said, what? You're not impressed? I said, no. I said, and it's a false concept. So what do you mean? He said, look at the weather. I mean, it's so many things, there are hurricanes, and I said, there's always been hurricanes and floods. It's normal that rivers flood. It's not normal that you build cities right next to a river that's going to flood naturally. So I said, and whatever you do, it's not going to stop it from flooding. You can build the best different types of concrete this and concrete that, but eventually the river's going to flood. And I said, you have to learn to live with nature, not try and control nature, because it's impossible to control nature. But it is possible to pacify nature. And then I explained to him about, the real cause of inclement weather, the real cause of seasons not changing in a regular way, the real cause. I said also, look, in previous times, the Earth actually fell out of its orbit and into the Garbhodak Ocean. And Krishna had to appear as Varaha and put it back into its orbit. And the reason it fell down is because the demons and the asuras, they were making gigantic holes into the crust of the earth. Look at Ravana. He built a tunnel from Sri Lanka all the way to Brazil to bring back from Brazil gold and other precious things to build his high-tech city of Lanka. I said, so what's happening today is massive amounts of oil being pulled out of the earth, and they're replacing the oil with water. Now, surprisingly, water is more dense than oil. And because of that, you're changing the internal balance of the earth, which means that it could affect the axis of the Earth and the movement of the Earth, and the Earth could fall out, theoretically it could fall out of its orbit. So these type of activities are very dangerous, and they build these very, very deep mines, and it's going deeper and deeper. So fortunately, they haven't gone more than about 4 or 5 miles into the crust of the Earth. But you can see Ravana, he went all through the crust of the Earth and right through the center into Brazil. So this has an effect on the weather, no doubt about it. And there are other things that have effects on the weather, such as sinful activity, illicit sex, gambling, meat eating, intoxication. And how about killing 55 billion animals in America alone to feed people's desire for meat? How about that? It's a huge amount of killing unnecessarily. I said, so, and anyway, your climate action is mainly having everybody give up gas engine cars and just go to electric cars. But that is more dangerous than the emissions from cars. He said, what do you mean that's more dangerous? I said, the batteries that are made, those electric batteries, they have very dangerous metals in them, like cadmium and other things that are coming from China mostly. These are very rare, metals. And eventually all those batteries are going to be junked. And when they're junked, it's going to contaminate. Just like the American government built an atomic bomb. But all the atomic waste is a big problem now, and they were able to export a lot of that waste to countries like China, but now China doesn't want America's waste anymore. They have their own waste, atomic waste, right? So now they're sending it to Africa, to poor countries, and paying the Africans to poison their environment instead of the American environment. You see, you're going to have worse problem than what you have now with all those batteries coming from electric cars. If everyone changes to an electric car, there's going to be a huge amount of batteries that they have to junk. So I said, that's not a solution. He said, okay, then what's the solution? I said, the solution is that you have to learn to live according to the self-sufficient cycles of nature. I said, nature is self-sufficient. It doesn't need anybody else's help. And there are cycles in nature that's called the carbon cycle, the nitrogen cycle, the phosphorus cycle, the wind cycle, the water cycle. There's so many cycles that that compost or regenerative cycles that are naturally occurring in nature. We have to learn how to work with them. And I told them about, no plow, no dig growing of vegetables. And I said, look, you want to empower the government with a responsibility for climate action. I want to empower the people on a grassroots level to do something, not the government, because you empower the government, you're just going to make them force you to pay more taxes. Oh no, he said, we can't have more taxes. We're sick and tired of paying taxes. Everyone I spoke to in the neighborhood is sick and tired of the taxes. I said, yes, it's normal. You're going to put another responsibility on the government, and they're going to raise your taxes. You want climate action? Okay, we'll give you climate action, but you're going to pay for it. The government doesn't make any money. They only make money by taking your money. He said, so all of a sudden the guy is breaking into a little bit of a sweat because he sees, he began to understand that what he's advocating is nonsense. It's not going to really help the people. And it's not going to make a difference either, because their main action of climate action is to stop all, petroleum-run cars and buses and airplanes, right? They want everything to be electric, but to do that, you have to produce a huge amount of electricity. And I told him, look, this is not a good idea. I said, already in Sammamish, about 5 days a year we're without electricity because there's windstorms. I said, has your electricity gone off during the winter? He said, yeah. I said, imagine if everything was electric, it could go off. What are you going to do? The computers don't work, your electric stove doesn't work, your electric car doesn't work, what would you do? I said, it could be a collapse. What if it was a war and everything was electric? You could be without electricity for years, right? I said, this is a nonsense idea. It's not a good idea. And he said, oh my God. He said, I never thought of all these things. He said, I'm going to bring my son to talk to you. I said, no, we have to learn to live minimally, be minimalists. Then we have to empower each individual to be self-sufficient. Then you will change the climate. That's real climate action. And then the real action is become Krishna conscious and depend on the mercy of God rather than depending on the mercy of the Sammamish Council or the Seattle Council. I said, this is nonsense. They don't know what the heck they're doing. And this whole dialogue about climate change, the climate change that's been like that in the past also. Whenever a demon was born, the climate would change. There would be hurricanes, there would be storms, there would be lightning, there would be so many catastrophic events. I said, but there were only a few demons in the past, Hiranyakashipu and Ravana and Kamsa. But today, every damn day, there's another demon that's born. That's what's causing the climate change. And he didn't know what to say. So you see, this is all, they're teaching it in the school. They have signs up in the school. In the Seattle Center, there's this big new building, and a big sign, climate action, This is nonsense, but they don't understand. And they're going to spend billions of dollars, and then they're going to end up with a bigger problem than they have now. So we have to be able to convince people to be empowered and self-sufficient and not depend on big government, because big government means big taxes. And they know that. They don't want their taxes to be increased. But they keep wanting the government to do something else, and then something else, and then something else. So they want the government in Seattle to do something about the homeless people and about the drug addicts. What did they do? They opened a clinic to give free drugs to the drug addicts and give them free injections of heroin and other things. So that's their solution. That solution makes the problem worse. And that's why there's more homeless people and more drug addicts now in Seattle. So you let the government make a solution, it's going to make it worse. It's not going to make it better. And it's going to increase taxes. Anyway, we have to have our platform, and this is the beginning of the platform. We have to be able to convince people not to go in the wrong direction, such as climate action, such as Black Lives Matter, such as white people matter. All that is racism. Only one race matters, right? Whether it's white people or black people or green people. And climate change, the inclement climate is due to the sinful activities of the people. And there's a whole beautiful purport in the Srimad Bhagavatam that explains that during the time of Maharaj Yudhishthira's reign or Lord Ramachandra's reign, nobody died. The weather completely cooperated with the people. But this is a verse in the Bhagavad Gita also, 3rd chapter, 10th and 11th verse of Bhagavad Gita explains the same thing. It says, in charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods. This is 3.10. I'm sorry, wait a minute. It is 3.11. The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you, and thus, by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. There it is, right there. That's the solution to the problem. Right? The previous verse says, in the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures, meaning Lord Brahma, sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, be thou happy by this yajna, sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation. Friends, this is the plan of God. He wants you to live prosperously and happily and achieve liberation at the end of life. And in the purport, Prabhupada says, the Prajapati is Lord Vishnu, and he is the Lord of all living creatures, all worlds, and all beauties, and the protector of everyone. The Lord created this material world to enable the conditioned souls to learn how to perform yajnas, sacrifices, for the satisfaction of Vishnu, so that while in the material world they can live very comfortably, without anxiety, and after finishing the present material body, they can enter into the kingdom of God. That is the whole program for the conditioned soul. By performance of yajna, the conditioned souls gradually become Krishna conscious and become godly in all respects. In the age of Kali, the Sankirtan yajna, the chanting of the names of God, is recommended by the Vedic scriptures. And this transcendental system was introduced by Lord Chaitanya for the deliverance of all men in this age. Sankirtana yajna, and see, it doesn't say deliverance only for black people, or deliverance only for white people, or deliverance only for yellow people. He said for everyone to be delivered, right? That means that every race, every country, every ethnicity can become Krishna conscious and go back to Godhead, right? Sankirtan yajna and Krishna consciousness go well together. Lord Krishna, in his devotional form as Lord Chaitanya, is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam 11.5.32 as follows, with special reference to the Sankirtan Yajna. In this age of Kali, people who are endowed with sufficient intelligence will worship the Lord, who is accompanied by his associates by performance of Sankirtan Yajna. Other yajnas prescribed in the Vedic literatures are not easy to perform in this age of Kali, but the Sankirtan Yajna is easy and sublime for all purposes, as recommended in Bhagavad Gita also, 9.14. So then the next verse clinches it. It says that there can be this cooperation between the demigods who are in charge of the material facilities of life and human beings. The demigods being pleased by sacrifices, and what is the only sacrifice they can perform correctly in Kali Yuga? It is Sankirtan Yajna. All the other ritual sacrifices will not be complete. And being pleased by sacrifices will also please you, and thus by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. So those two verses are the solution to the problem of climate action or climate change. See? Will people believe it? I don't think our devotees believe it. I don't think our own devotees believe it. So how are they going to convince anybody else? Right? This guy comes to me to convince me to be engaged in climate action, and I convince him that it's a waste of time. And his kids are absolutely sure that they got to do this, right? So now he's got to convince his kids. So he said, I'm going to bring my son to you. I'm going to let you talk to him. This is the problem. We don't realize what our real duty is. Our real duty is to correct all these nonsense philosophies and thoughts and so-called movements. If we don't do that, we're not actually preaching properly, right? So I'll stop right there. Any questions?
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. So a couple of things. Last week when I was dropping Sreshta for an activity in Bellevue downtown, I saw Iranian Lives Matter.
Everyone's going to say this now, Black lives matter, Iranian lives matter, white American lives matter, It's racism. Don't you understand? That's what Nazism was about. They said only white, Teutonic, blue-eyed, blonde-haired people matter. So they killed gypsies. They said they're not human beings. They killed Jews. They said they're enemies of the Teutonic race. And then they killed communists because they said communists, they're nonsense. We're going to kill them. See, that's what racism is. It makes one class matters. Everybody else doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Yeah, so another one, Prabhupada, when he saw that statue of a man, he said it's an illicit art. Now, I mean, I know some background, but I would like for you to comment on. In the Indian temples, there are statues that also depict some of the similar
And
postures.
even copulation is.
Yeah.
is-
So what is the? Can you articulate in terms of what's the difference and why is that?
If Prabhupada said the Greek statue with the guy showing his genitals is illicit art, then he would probably say the same thing about the naked statues and temples of, and then, but I mean, I'm not going to speculate though, but we have one example, right? So if he sees the same thing somewhere else, I'm sure he's going to say the same thing. I'm pretty sure. But I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure because he said it about that. And I'm telling the truth. I'm not making this story up. He walked there, he stopped, he looked at it and he said, "This is illicit art." And we were all confused. We didn't understand why he said that. And then he explained it. He said, if there was a real man standing here like this, the police would come and arrest him. So if he sees, two people copulating in the statues, showing that, then he would probably say the same thing. By the way, did he ever put it on the Krishna Balaram temple? Anything like that? No.
And then I think specifically to your point, for maybe we should have a write-up on what's wrong with the current, like the Black Lives Matter. I mean, I know you've done a lot of sessions, but I think we should have a write-up that educates our kids and ourselves, so that they have all the arguments and the philosophical basis on like why that is either short-sighted or it's incomplete, wrong,
flat out wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Even the climate action, I think, is an important one.
Climate action is a big thing. They're spending billions of dollars on it, right? I'm going to show you. There's this company that specializes in climate action. They have 8,000 employees. 8,000 employees in the United States working on climate, action, right?
Yeah, it is the big thing now.
It's a
There's lot
huge
of-
thing. Huh?
They're going to make it worse.
They're going to make it worse, yeah.
Because ever any solution they try to build, it never fixed any problem. It made it worse.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they're being led by Sudras. They're not being led by Brahmanas. Right?
Behind the scenes, there are some companies that are trying to make money. So they're just trying to. It's all capitalistic.
They get a lot of money from the government.
Yeah, so it's
to
a scheme
fight
after scheme
climate
on.
action. But one of the biggest guys in this is Bill Gates himself. He's complete nonsense. Although he's a generous guy, but still he's behind a lot of this stuff. He supports it. He's not the only one, but he supports it in a big way.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, as you talked about, in Krishna consciousness is a soul to soul relationship.
Yeah.
So, so my question is for a neophyte, like as you gave the example about seeing the ugly person,
Yeah.
and the super soul is present. So my question is, how a neophyte can develop this?
How what?
How a neophyte can develop this this soul to soul relationship, like
Just
seeing
come
the
to the class. Come to the class. We talk about it.
because theoretically we know, like, but actually when
Well,
we
no,
go
you
through the-
have to understand first theoretically that Krishna is in the heart of every living ant, including the ant, including the one-celled amoeba, right? Krishna is in the heart. People say, and one devotee challenged Prabhupada, I said, but scientists haven't found any heart in the amoeba or the ant. And Prabhupada said, oh, are you sure? He said, well, they say there's no heart. I said, but they don't know. They're not seeing properly. If Krishna says, I am in the heart of every living entity, right? It's that verse in the Ekopya so rachayatam jagananda kotim yaschaktirasti jagananda chayayananta andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam. That's the line. Andantaras paramanu charanam. So that is proof that Krishna says, I am in the heart of every living entity. So, therefore, Prabhupada said, even the ant, even the amoeba has a heart, whether you know about it or not. Because Krishna said so. In fact, the Christians, they have a nice saying, they put it in their cars sometime. Jesus said it, I believe it, that's it. So we should be like that too. Krishna said it, I believe it, that's it. Haribol. You want to chant? So how can a neophyte? They have to come to classes and hear these things and see the proof in the Shastra and believe that Krishna is actually exists, that there's a spiritual world, that there's life after death. Once they accept all these things, then they will be able to preach effectively. Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma
Bandho Muyi Savadana Mate
Bandho Muyi Savadana Mate
Jagara Prasade Bhai E Bhavatoriya Jai
Janara Prasade Bhai E Bhavatoriya Jai
Krishna Prapti Hoy Jaha Hoite
Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chite Te Koriya Aikya
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chite Te Koriya Aikya
Arana Kori Go Mani Asha
Arana Koriya Mane Asha
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati
Je Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
Prasade Pure Sarvasa
चक्षुदान दिलो से जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
चक्षुदान दिलो से जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो
दिव्य ज्ञानी दे प्रकाशितो
प्रेम भक्ति जागा होते आविद्या विनाश जाते
प्रेम भक्ति जागा
होते आविद्या विनाश जाते वेदे गाय जघर चरितो
Vedega Janara Charito
Shri Guru Charana Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adama Janara Bandhu
Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu
Lokenath Lokera Jivana
Lokenath Lokera Jivana
Aha Prabhu Koro Doya Tego More Padachaya
Aha Prabhu Koro Doya Dea More Padachaya
Eve Jash Gushik Tribhuvana
Deveya Sushakti Bhuvana
Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana
Prabhupada Patita Pavana.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine.
Namo Om Vishnupadaya
Krishna Prasthaya
Bhutale
Srimate
Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine
Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev,
Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev.
Nittai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nittai Gaura Hari Bol, Nittai Gaura Hari Bol,
Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Bol Premanandi Hari Bol. Jayam Vishnupad Paramansa Parajikachasta Tadasata Shishi Shimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Indi Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Sri Kahoshi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gogovinath. Sham Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Samveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the symbol devotees. All glories to the symbol devotees. All glories to the symbol. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Bhavani Ki Jai. Haribo, Haribo, Haribo. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhakti Srimati Bhakti Srimati Namaste Saraswati Devi. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we contain pure devotion to service. I bow down to the lotus feet with great reverence. By His grace, one can cross over the material suffering and attain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from His lotus mouth. Attachment to His lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills the heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From His ecstatic prema emanates, by Him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of His character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor, and Lord and master of the devotees. Master, be merciful unto me. Give me the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all over the three worlds.